round 17 of 22 and the 2025 MotoGP season. We've swapped out the familiarity of Europe to embrace the Far East in our first stop on our season running at the Mobility Resort Motegi. Behind the hills and ready for the weekend of MotoGP action, one question remains. Who will be big in Japan? It all started in the sweltering Thai heat in Buriram before we crossed over to the vibrancy of South America and Argentina and then headed north to the USA and Austin, Texas. It was on to our final non-European destination under the lights of Lusail and Qatar before we hit the old towns and metropolises of Europe. Jerez, Le Mans, Silverstone and Aragon before nothing but back-to-backs. Mugello and Assen, Sachsenring and Brno, the Red Bull Ring and Balaton Park, Barcelona and Misano, all as quick as that. But now it's the part of the season which really matters in terms of the championship. From Motegi in Japan, we'll head due south to Mandalika in Indonesia, across to Phillip Island in Australia, and Sepang, a short distance from Malaysia's bustling capital Kuala Lumpur. Portimao and Valencia, they end the year once we're back from the east, but these next 4 rounds could and should see titles won and history made. Marc Marquez can do the business this weekend and claim a 7th MotoGP crown, whilst Moto2 and Moto3, they remain wide open. It all starts here, just 2 hours out of Tokyo, Motegi. We're greeted with pleasant sunshine in what is, after all, the land of the rising sun as we gear up for the 17th GP of the season. Good morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world, and of course a very special good morning to those of you in Europe who are tuning in early. If you're staying up through the night, then grab yourself something strong, and if you're waking up, grab yourself a coffee. But either way, get that fridge pulled closer. You're in the company of Kiko Giles and Elliot York. We're taking you through FP1 from Moto3 live from trackside. No jet lag in this commentary box, but thankfully, despite touching down on Wednesday, that mammoth 20-hour journey was absolutely worthwhile. Good morning, El, and welcome the world. Enjoy the Japanese GP.
Good morning, mate. Yeah, brilliant to be here in Japan. Not sure about the lack of jet lag in the commentary box. I feel like I've been hit by a truck this morning, but hey ho, we carry on, and it's great to be here at the Japanese Grand Prix as always. And you mentioned the weather, it's beautiful today. It feels towards 30 degrees already. That's what we're expecting a little bit later on, and you can see there beautiful blue skies greeting us for Moto3 Free Practice. 17 rounds gone already. Where has that time gone in 2025? And that is the lay of the land in Moto3 as we land here in Japan. A commanding lead for Jose Antonio.
He does indeed dominate the championship standings, bouncing back to victory last time out. So now Helper Piqueras, all that hard work done at the start of this second half of the season, undone. He's still second. Max Keeler's bearing third, but it is really starting to look like Jose Antonio Rueda's championship. Not that it ever wasn't, but perhaps there were some quite worried opening couple of races when we did come back from summer. But nonetheless, Jose Antonio Rueda has a commanding lead, and he will look to add onto that this weekend and perhaps even consolidate that this weekend. Just outside the top 3, David Munoz and Alvaro Carpe, they complete the top 5. Kelso, Fernandez and Valentin Peroni, all with good showings last time out, and they have a say as we close in to what is this real pointy end of the season. We're going to be taking you through Moto3 FP1 in just a short matter of time. Jorge Martin and Marco Bezzecchi watching on as they normally do from the Aprilia box trackside. Moto3, of course, the first session of the day here in Japan. It's been quite the season in Moto3, plenty of rookie standouts, but in the end, Jose Antonio Rueda was dubbed the favourite coming into this season, and I think it's fair to say he's living up to that tag, and he is now within striking distance over the next 4 weeks of becoming world champion.
Yes, 78 points clear now and held Piqueras, and that victory last time out a couple of weeks ago at Misano, for me, was a title-winning victory. Next corner, let's that, a fantastic move up the inside of Maximo Quilez, who afterwards held his hand up and said, play to Jose Antonio Rueda. That was a brilliant move at the final corner. And I spoke to Rueda after the race, and I asked him about, what are you thinking about the championship at all, and what was your tactics going into the race? Did also caveat that with Ted. It looks from the outside very hard to make a plan in Moto3, and he nodded his head and said, yes, it absolutely is difficult to make a plan, but at the end of the day, he said, well, you've got to go for it. And he's got that lead in the championship where it, of course, matters if you do make a mistake, but he's got some breathing room, and when you're in that position, you've got a chance to gain an extra 5 points and win for the 8th time in 2025. The way that snatched it with both hands, and for me that was pretty much him winning the title there and then, with Keras within a shout of a podium, but never really looks like he had a chance of standing on the podium. Was just adrift of that group. Him and Adrian Fernandez then caught back up in the latter stage. Of course, Fernandez went on to claim a podium, but for Keras it was a bit of a disappointing weekend for a way that just phenomenal. That's that move, and really that puts him well ahead of the rest if he wasn't already.
We are green on this Moto3 FP1 session. Also up here on the left-hand side of the comms box, forgetting to put the mic on, but I'm sure you heard me. Anyway, we are taking you through the home heroes, of which there are a couple of them to really keep an eye on. Ryusei Yamanaka had signed a deal to stay with the team for next year. We'll talk a lot about 2026 and the silly season shenanigans coming right the way through this session, but Ryusei Yamanaka has got his ride bagged for next year, and he'll be looking to celebrate that this weekend with a very fine performance. And we've had a glimpse of Kaio Furusato. He had his best Motegi finish here last year, coming from 13th up to 9th. But whether or not Furusato is able to do something similar or better this year remains to be seen. Furusato has had plenty of pace over the last couple of rounds. It seems to be, if he gets it working on a Friday, it doesn't work on the Sunday. If he doesn't have it working on the Friday, he comes back through the field and gives him too much to do on Sunday, but still arrives. He was up inside the top 10 right throughout Friday last time out at Misano. In the end, in the Grand Prix, from his 7th place in qualifying, he could only manage 12th. So Kaio Furusato, hopefully for him, will be getting spurred on by the home fans this weekend in Japan.
Yeah, certainly. I spoke to Kaio after the race on Sunday in Misano, because it was a disappointing and very low-key performance from Furusato after he showed good promise in practice and in qualifying. Was 7th on Friday afternoon and then qualified 7th on Saturday, and then finished 12th in the race. And he did say that he thinks that there was a little bit of an issue with the tyres in Sunday's Grand Prix. Never got going, didn't have the same feeling on the Honda as he did throughout the weekend, and it was a track where he was thinking, especially after his Barcelona podium, where he had a bit of a mentality switch. He said he worked a lot on his mental side of the game ahead of the Catalan Grand Prix after a few results that didn't quite go his way, and he wasn't very pleased with how he was performing within himself. And it was a good podium, a fantastic podium for Furusato to get in Barcelona, but yeah, he was just mentioning that he was not happy at all with the tyres in Sunday's race in Misano. But fresh challenge awaits here on home turf, but he did also mention that this isn't one of his favourite circuits, unfortunately, for Furusato, but the racing in front of your home ground can give you an extra too. So Furusato should be in and around that lead group come Sunday. We are expecting an important weekend for the Japanese riders, a special weekend, of course.
Just having a glimpse of Alvaro Carpe and Eddie O'Shea. It was Eddie O'Shea's birthday just yesterday. So Eddie O'Shea, I make him now 19. I think I'm correct with that. So Eddie O'Shea, happy belated birthday to you. He's just crossed the line. He's starting his first flying lap, I believe. So the number 8 we just caught a glimpse of on the Grid MLAV Racing Honda. So Michael Labs coming into the paddock this morning. Hopefully the team can have a very decent outing. It is Honda's home GP. This circuit is owned by Honda, so they'll be looking to try and make that work if they can. We're having a look at Dennis Foggia at the moment, coming through turns 3 and 4. Pretty much taken as one. It is a double apex, but it is set of corners here down towards turn 5 and down one of the back straights here. We've got a lot of them here at Motegi. We're at the moment, just 5 minutes into this session, Adrian Fernandez has gone top ahead of David Munoz and Tayo Furusato. We're having a look at Riccardo Rossi, and Ricky Rossi really in need of a result. Lots of speculation about what he's going to be doing next year, but it looks like it might be a bit difficult for him to stay with the Regal Snipers team. But more on that in a little while. I'll tell you what we did have last time out at Lozano was a little bit of not controversy, but definitely difference of opinion. Valentin Peroni, we're checking in on him now. He's just ahead of Luca Lanetta versus David Munoz, although it was a bit more the other way around in the race itself. David Munoz T-boning him down at turn 4 at Lozano, but thankfully both stayed upright. Peroni was back in the fight for victory, but the shots after in the box probably not the most diplomatic, and I know Valentin Peroni was far from impressed when we caught up with him later on that day.
Yes, safe to say Peroni and team manager Hervé Contral weren't too pleased with how David Munoz was behaving, let's say, in the opening few laps, as David Munoz goes top of the time sheets early on in this FP1 session. Essentially, 3 words from Peroni when I asked him about it. It's always him, and Hervé Contral, the Tech3 team boss, echoed those thoughts as well. He was saying David Munoz was doing David Munoz things early on in that race. Now, I can agree with that to some extent, understandably so. The team manager and Peroni were slightly annoyed at the end of that race. Peroni, of course, made that small error on that final lap when he was in that victory fight for sure. Another brilliant weekend for Valentin Peroni over at Lozano. So with the adrenaline still pumping and obviously being disappointed with missing out on that podium on the last lap, understandable Peroni went to try and have a word with Munoz. Intrigued to see if they did manage to have some words post-race at all, but when I spoke to him in the broadcaster set, they hadn't managed to speak, but Peroni was basically saying, look, I was just a bit fed up, and there was no need to do that sort of thing early on in the race, and it's always him, it's always the same rider doing that thing. Now, it cost David Munoz a lot of time. He dropped outside of the points, and to be fair to Munoz, he did produce a pretty good comeback ride to finish up inside that top 10 in P7 after losing a lot of time. But yeah, you got to say that there was just no real need, and the move wasn't really on, was it? Down at turn 4, a tricky place to pass anyway, and didn't quite fully get alongside Peroni into the sharp right-hander. And yeah, we all know what happened after that. Luckily, both riders didn't crash, but understandably that Peroni and Tech3 weren't too impressed, let's say. So Peroni, though, went on to have a great race. Munoz went on to have a solid comeback ride, as I said, so I think it'll be, after being a bit annoyed for an hour or so after the race at Lozano, I think it'll just be brushed aside and ready to get going again here at Motegi. Of course, Peroni and the rookies coming here for the first time, so very intrigued to see how they get on.
We're probably not going to see them in each other's hospitalities when we're back in Europe, let's put it that way, but hopefully that's what we want. We want good rivalries, we want a little bit of needle, and we definitely want to see riders going into other riders' boxes and giving them a pick of their mind, because that is what we want to see in MotoGP. We want to see that kind of drama, and I think Valentin Peroni was well within his rights. There was no fisticuffs or anything like that. It was all fairly civil. Yeah. It just probably wasn't the most diplomatic, as I said. But anyway, that is the lay of the land in terms of Peroni versus Munoz, and that is one to keep an eye on, because they're both going to be right up the top again this weekend. Oh, Max Quiles was absolutely sideways there, down in towards turn 5. Quiles, of course, coming here for the first time, and at the moment is straight up inside the top 5, so Motegi is not worrying him at all. He's just ahead of Scott Ogden, who we pick up now. Scott Ogden has had a really, really tricky run of form. He's had no top 10 since P7 at Assen, and he's never scored a point at Motegi. So the young Brit from Doncaster is going to have a tough weekend this weekend, but he'll be hoping to hit the ground running and at least get up inside those Q2 spots automatically later on today.
Yeah, some serious chatter on that front end of the KTM through turn 7 there as well. But yeah, 5 points in the last 6 races for Ogden. He's had a bit of a dip in form, unfortunately, for the Briton. So yeah, he'll be hoping that Motegi can bring some success, and back to success is what Joel Kelso had over first in Barcelona, had the feeling he did at the start of the year, where he saw Kelso regularly challenging for podiums and victories, of course, as well. But that was reconfirmed over at Misano when he was on the front row again after qualifying on the front row at the Catalan Grand Prix. And he basically said after the race that, yeah, that confirmed that the feeling is back. I can do what I want into the braking zone. I've got the front end feeling back. I can basically throw the bike around and feel as comfortable as I have done basically pre-summer. Obviously the 66 had a little bit of a dip in form after that. But yeah, he was super happy with his race. A little bit disappointed with the last 2 laps, he said. But apart from that, he was really pleased with that P4, and I think he was less than a couple of tenths away from victory. A very closely contested victory fight over at Misano, a brilliant Moto3 race, and it was good to see Kelso back in that fight as Luca Lanetta died at the inside of Eddie O'Shea. 2 Honda riders down at turn 5 before we go under one of the 2 bridges. And of course, for Kelso, as we look at one of the MLAV Hondas, he's moving on to pastures new next year. He will be joining the MLAV team on a Honda, as we see Eddie O'Shea run it onto the grass out of victory corner. Just getting a little bit wrong there, but nothing too much to worry about in terms of getting it out of shape. But yeah, Eddie O'Shea testing the limits and then some at the final corner.
That definitely would have caught his attention. Yes, Eddie O'Shea, of course, well, fighting for a ride in this paddock at the moment, because we do have Joel Kelso moving on to that Grid MLAV machine. Now that is quite a move, I've got to say. Joel Kelso moving off of KTM and onto a Honda. You don't see many riders voluntarily doing that after this season, but Joel Kelso up for a challenge obviously in 2025, and if there's anyone who can really drag the Grid MLAV team up the order a little bit and give them a little bit of confidence, because it has been a confidence-sapping year for them, both in terms of reliability and in terms of results out there, then of course Kelso is probably going to be one of your riders. Marco Morelli is in that second Grid MLAV spot this weekend. And just while we're on the housekeeping, I have been waiting to say this for 6 months, but welcome back to Matteo Bertelli, who is back from some quite serious leg injuries. 3 operations later and a lot of recovery. He has been out on a training bike in Italy on an R6 Yamaha, so good to see that Matteo Bertelli is back after such a long time out. At the moment they're in 16th place, as you can see, 1.7 seconds away from David Munoz at the very top of the timing tower. But this weekend, I caught up with Bertelli yesterday, and this is the weekend just to get through it, try and get something on the board if possible, but more than anything, get through it, see where his endurance is at, and hopefully get through it without any mistakes. He has had a couple of crashes during those tests as well, but he's been absolutely fine. So Matteo Bertelli, you've got to see his arm to believe just quite how rough that injury seems to have been, but thankfully he's all right.
Yeah, great to see Bertelli back. Of course, had a fantastic start to the season, and then yeah, that crash he had away from the Grand Prix scene, unfortunately. We've not seen him since Austin, where he did pick up his debut Grand Prix podium. Of course, was on pole a couple of times in Thailand and Argentina, and great for the Level Up MTA team to have them back at full strength. Of course, Bertelli is returning next year. The team confirms that, alongside Marcos Uriarte, who will be returning with the Level Up MTA next year. And as we mentioned, Kelso moving on to the Honda, and Kelso did say that he was looking at opportunities to hop up into Moto2, but there wasn't really anything that came about, so he fancied a fresh challenge, and he was catching up with our good friend and colleague Neil Morrison after the race, and he did say that it is a 2-year contract with MLAV unless he gets a Moto2 opportunity next year, and the team will obviously allow him to progress into Moto2 if that does happen. But Kelso said he was sad to say goodbye to KTM. They've offered him great support over the years, but he's really excited for a new challenge, and he believes, the Australian, that he can be the one to bring that team closer to the front and give Honda another rider worthy of challenging for victories and podiums. So an exciting move for Kelso, a little bit of a surprising one. I think some people will look at it, but of course Kelso has been in those meetings. MLAV is a very experienced team manager and racer as well, and Kelso did say that what he knows is they're bringing new staff and bringing new ideas into the fray next year. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see Kelso on a Honda next year, and there's going to be plenty of movements as well, as we do focus in on Matteo Bertelli, P17 at this moment in time, and it's just great to see the 18 back out there, and just fingers crossed he gets through this weekend without any issues.
Yeah, not looking particularly uncomfortable either. He's already definitely given it a decent go out there. So Matteo Bertelli might have sat up out of the victory corner, turn 14 that time around. But Bertelli, brilliant to see him back out here, because I think the accident, it was quite worrying for a little while. Of course, like I said, I caught up with him yesterday. I won't go into all the details, but for sure he doesn't remember much from the accident itself. So well, that's the worries of doing motocross, I presume, as that's what he was doing at the time. And yeah, Matteo Bertelli, great to see him back on two wheels now inside the Grand Prix paddock. David Munoz, we've taken him to the line. He's been doing some laps with his teammate Guido Pini. Pini is now behind him. Munoz P1. Munoz, you've got to say, one of the favourites coming into this weekend, because this is a drop off, just as I say that. He gets that completely wrong. Down in towards turn 1, foot down, lose a mark in trials for that, but keeps it upright and saves the team a little bit of money. And David Munoz is on his way, having just, he didn't go any faster last time around. He was only a couple of tenths of a second away from what he was able to do. Though at a 56.9, it's a 56.7 at the moment that sees him up in P1 as he takes through the long lap penalty lane. Hopefully he won't be needing to do that anytime soon, but you never know with the number 64. But really, he's one of the most experienced riders here, Al, and he should be on course for something special this weekend, even if he does have a little off-track excursion down towards turn 1.
Yeah, just obviously flirting with the limits in the braking zone down at turn 1, a tricky right-hander, a double apex right-hander really, straight into turn 2 before you fire it up towards turn 3. I don't think that'll be the last person to get it wrong down at turn 1. This circuit is all about hard braking, aggressive braking. Turn 1, turn 3, turn 5, turn 10, and down at the 90-degree corner down at turn 11 as well. It's, yeah, if you're not feeling comfortable on the brakes around the Mobility Resort Motegi, then you're going to have a difficult weekend. So yeah, Munoz, no such worries, just yeah, just getting a little bit wrong down at turn 1 as Buchanan gets it a little bit wrong down at turn 5 with Marco Morelli just behind him. And as you mentioned, Kiko, he's back on the Honda after missing Misano because he was in Red Bull Rookies Cup duty. Morelli got his first Junior GP win last weekend at Misano as well, so he comes into this one in a rich vein of form and very exciting as well. He will be joining Maximo Quiles, who's just on our screens now, in the Aspar team next year. We got that confirmation ahead of the weekend over at Misano, and that is a very, very good-looking team for next year for Aspar.
Yeah, Morelli's victory as well in Junior GP, right on the line. He left it very, very late. It looked like he was going to have to settle for second, but he came right through last weekend at Misano. So Marco Morelli leading Junior GP on a high and coming to Grand Prix racing where he's already had a point, so yeah, that's very, very encouraging indeed. David Munoz makes it back safely to the garage down there in pit lane. He is P1 at the moment ahead of Adrian Fernandez. Then it's Quiles, Rueda and Joel Kelso. Foggia, Piqueras, Yamanaka, Lanetta and David Almanza completing your top 10. We're having a look at Ruche Moodley here at Motegi for the first time in his career. So this first session really all about trying to learn the track and learn the intricacies here of this 4.8 kilometre layout. But through the final corner he comes. He's on a personal best at the moment. This should put him up through the order a little bit. Good to see the South Africans have made the trips over to the Far East. And Moodley does improve his time, stays 26th at the moment, but is an improvement nonetheless, 2.5 seconds away from top slot. We are 20 minutes into this session, a quarter of an hour remaining. This opening one just all about really getting dialed in, and as much as our European friends at home, it's about waking yourself up into this Motor Grand Prix of Japan weekend. It's a long weekend, this one, Motegi, because it's the first one of our flyaway. So everyone generally arrives this week. They spend a couple of days acclimatising to the schedule, the weather, the air. Of course, they've got a little bit of driving to do as well, getting out of Tokyo up to Motegi. And then a lot of these riders, particularly Moto3, won't be staying close to the track. A lot of them are out over in Mito or an hour or so away from the track itself. So not the easiest weekend, and it's definitely a draining one. Thankfully for us, we're in the circuit hotel, so we can roll out of bed into comms box if we need to.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to do that this morning as Quiles then jumps up into P2. He was very excited to get going on the Asian Tour, as all the rookies really, but Quiles was really excited about this sort of layout, really aggressive braking, hard straight up braking, which Quiles is very, very strong at. He's been strong pretty much everywhere, to be honest, Quiles, and he is, of course, the top rookie in the championship and top rookie so far. Early doors this weekend, and as I mentioned early on, Quiles just held his hands up and was really mature, actually, after the race, and just said, no, fair play to Rueda, and I've got to look at it and think, well, Rueda's been the best Moto3 rider this year. The championship doesn't lie. He's also got three more years experience in the class compared to me, and I need to learn about these things as I go. And I thought it was a very mature and level-headed response from Quiles, who, you know,
are you sure?
after the race, after losing the victory at the final corner, you would understand still in the broadcast cassette about half an hour, maybe a little bit less after that final corner, could still be a little bit annoyed, but he was obviously a little bit upset, but just took the positives from it, and fair play for doing that as well. Just said he destroyed his rear tyre a little bit, trying to recatch Kelso Rueda, I think it was, who had just crept a bit of a lead, and yeah, Quiles was suffering with grip in those final couple of laps. I think a lot of people were, and it helped Rueda to pounce and make a move, but he's looking feisty already this weekend as the 28.
That's one word to describe it. I'm sure Jacob Rulston, who he just usurped over at turn 7 and 8, is thinking of another word. Coming through the final corner, worth noting last time out that Quiles did qualify down on the 3rd row. He's only had, if I just double check my notes one more time, just 2 front row qualifying positions in the last 9 GPs. He came from 9th last time out to come through to P2, so he gave himself a little bit of work to do, as well did Max Quiles. It has been a tricky run of qualifying form, just showing how important it is even in Moto3 now at some tracks.
Yeah, we've heard that from a few riders this year, haven't we? How in the last year or so, qualifying has become a lot more important. Now, if you're still qualifying in that top 10 on those front 3 rows, and if you get a good start, you can genuinely go with the group and not find it too much trouble as you get a nice slow-mo of Quiles down the hill into the 90-degree corner at turn 11. We're going to see plenty of action down there this weekend, as we always do here at Motegi. A brilliant end to the lap, a perfect overtaking opportunity before you flick it left through 12 and 13 and into the aptly named victory corner at 14. Oh, this is a good lap from Adrian Fernandez, isn't it? 6/10 clear of David Munoz time over halfway round, and another great performance, as we were talking about Quiles and Kelso and Rueda, was Adrian Fernandez at a timely podium, as to be said, and he was really pleased and wanted to thank his sort of team, as in his family, and also the Leopard racing team as well, for sticking with him and helping him out over the last few months, because it's been a difficult period for the number 31, but it was a great ride over in Brazil.
P3 last time out, and P3 last time here as well from the 3rd row of the grid, and P1 on your screens as he comes across the line, and it's the first rider by quite a lot of time, 0.8 of a second. He is ahead of David Munoz, and he's by far the first rider into the 155s. Gotta say, that was Fernandez's first podium since Argentina last time out. His last back-to-back podiums, well, they were the first 2 rounds of this year back in Buriram and Termas Rio Hondo. Like I said, 3rd place last year, and in terms of qualifying, that was Adrian Fernandez's Achilles heel before, not so much anymore. 6 top 10s in a row on the grid, that's his personal best record in the class, so he's on a decent bit of form. He's just going to be hoping to continue on here, and I've got to say, first thing on Friday morning, looks like he's going to.
Yeah, we mentioned qualifying being important now, and you've just said it there. He's sorted his qualifying out post-summer break, and the results have followed. And finally, after P6 in Hungary, also a 6th place in the Czech Republic, 8th in Austria, and of course then 3rd last time out after finishing inside the top 5 over at the Catalan Grand Prix. And as I mentioned, just a timely podium for Adrian Fernandez, who we know is fighting for his rides at Leopard Honda, and if he's not going to be at Leopard Honda, then he's searching for a ride elsewhere in Moto3, and that will have done him no harm whatsoever. The next best Honda rider over in Lozano was Tara Furusato in P12, so Adrian Fernandez a good 9-10 seconds ahead of the next best Honda. So yeah, fantastic work from the 31, and also in the last couple of laps, with 2 laps to go, it looked like him and Angel Piqueras were completely out of it, but Fernandez got his head down and strung a fantastic last couple of laps together and managed to pinch a P3. So top job from the 31 last time out, and that's given him great confidence heading into the flyaway stretch. And as you mentioned, a podium here last time out as well. So yes, he's looking good so far this weekend. Early stages, of course, let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but that was a really important podium, not just to get it on the board, but also mentally as well for Fernandez and that side of the box.
You speak to riders up and down the paddock, and it's all about form coming into the flyaways, because this part of the season, it does tend to give odd results. You can't follow a form book here. Maybe Japan's not so strange, because we normally have pretty stable weather here, but by the time we start getting out towards Australia, back to Malaysia, even Indonesia, of course, next time out, of course, next weekend, we have some odd weather that can really jumble up the grid, jumble up the order, and even if the Grand Prix itself is dry, you've got riders maybe coming through the field from a place they wouldn't normally be down at, coming through the field with riders they wouldn't normally race, and sometimes in the first dry session of the weekend, particularly out here in Asia, such as the weather patterns, and also just the tracks are different here, the grip levels are all different, the vibe is all different. We've not got the hospitalities, we've not got the trucks here. It's all about kind of living out of a suitcase for the next 4 or 5 weeks for these guys, depending on whether or not they go home. I'm fairly sure 80% of this paddock stays out in Indonesia after next weekend's Grand Prix. So it's all about getting the form book rolling kind of thing before you get here. You don't want to be starting here because it's not very indicative, but that was the consensus, and has been the consensus up and down the paddock, that those last couple of rounds in Barcelona and Lozano, they had to be strong so that you can come here in good form. And that's very, very accurate indeed if you're Adrian Fernandez and Joel Kelso right now. Kelso coming back to form last time out too, and he's right there in 2nd place at the moment. We just were tracking him through turn 11. This is Fernandez. Can tell you Eddie O'Shea down there in 16th is just behind Fernandez. His teammate Marco Merli there in 17th. Alvaro Carpe down in 18th. Now that is a bit of a concern. Alvaro Carpe has not been having a very happy time of things of late, and that's the other side of the momentum coming into the flyaways. If you're not in good form, they can be a real bit of hard work, and Alvaro Carpe down in 18th place. He will be not wanting to be down there for much longer. He's not in the best of form. He's struggling to match what he was able to do right at the start of the year as the rookie. Yeah,
it's been a bit of a downward slope in the latter half of the season so far for Carpe, who at one stage was Rueda's chief rival in the championship. But yeah, speaking to team manager Nicolas Ayo, it did mention that this can sometimes happen in rookie seasons. I think because Carpe came in with such high expectations, the Junior GP and Red Bull Rookies Cup winner, same as Rueda, same as Piqueras. Now, Piqueras had a pretty strong rookie campaign last year, Rookie of the Year, but Rueda has taken 3 years to properly get going in Moto3, and look where he is now at a dominant force. So I think for Nicolas Ayo, who is obviously very experienced within that team and of course raced in Moto3 as well, he knows that rookies aren't always going to have it their own way. It's quite rare that you get a Pedro Acosta or this year a Maximo Quiles who come in and straight away don't really ever have a blip in form. Unfortunately for Carpe, it's come in the last few races. He's finished outside of the top 8 on 4 consecutive occasions now, but he's still picking up points. He's still fifth in the championship. It's by no means a disaster, but he is now 17 points drift of David Munoz in 4th, and even further behind Maximo Quiles in 3rd in the Rookie of the Year chase. So I think if Quiles can continue this rich vein of form, the Rookie of the Year honours will go to the number 28. But don't rule out Carpe just yet. This stretch of the season can be a challenge, but it also can be a welcome one. If you are struggling for a bit of form, come out to this part of the world at a fresh challenge, and forget about what's happened over in Europe. Obviously these tracks the riders are a lot less accustomed to, a lot less experience on, so that can help people like Carpe who are just struggling a little bit to rediscover their mojo. So it would be good to see Carpe to try and be able to do that. I did catch up with the team in Misano, and they said it's nothing really in particular that's gone wrong for Carpe. I think they were just trying a certain few things, and they've just lost their way a little bit. So I think that the plan will be to just reel it back in, go to what they know, and hopefully for Carpe that can work out, and we can see him back challenging for podiums and challenging for that first victory, which at the start of the year we thought, well, it's going to be coming sooner rather than later. But yeah, that's just gone away a little bit in the last couple of races.
He'll find his form again, though. Let's hope so. Although Carpe, particularly in the last 2 Grand Prix of the year, the tracks he really knows very, very well indeed at Portimao and Valencia. We just saw Angel Piqueras move up from 15th place inside the top 3. Piqueras moves up to Moto2 in 2026. Stays with that team, of course, but just moves up onto a bigger bike now. That is a very exciting prospect. We've got Jose Antonio Rueda doing the same. Of course, he moves through as well. So a lot of changes coming on the 2026 Moto3 grid. We've got Rico Salmela. He's coming in to join Valentin Peroni as well over at the Tech 3 IO squad. So plenty to get into by the time we go green again next February. It's 4 months away, really.
Yeah, let's not try and think about that being only 4 months away. Brian Ariarte, recently crowned Red Bull Rookies Cup champion, of course, moving into the Red Bull KTM IO ranks alongside Carpe next year. And as you mentioned, Salmela moving into Tech 3 alongside Peroni, which means Jacob Ralston, as we already alluded to over the last couple of weekends, is searching for a ride. Pretty confident that Ralston, after his debut front row, of course, last time out, and yeah, decent performance in the race, just used up a little bit too much of his tyre in the opening half of the race and then struggled to defend in the latter half. But I'm sure Ralston will find a ride, no problems at all. But yeah, Piqueras moving up to Moto2, but doesn't look like he's going to be moving up as a Moto3 world champion at this stage. He moves into P3 because you can see there on your picture 78 points now, the gap to Jose Antonio Rueda, and I think Piqueras did manage to catch up with him after the race and not seen him this weekend so far either. But I think that would have been a bit of a hammer blow, well, quite a large hammer blow to his title hopes, and just generally how he's feeling after going to Misano, a circuit he won out, of course, in 2024, finished P2 when we went there a couple of weeks after the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix as well. And Rueda entered the weekend saying he didn't really feel like Misano was going to be a track where he'd be as strong as he has been at other places. And of course, Rueda went on to win at the final corner as well. So Piqueras, goes without saying, needs to take some points, some big points off Rueda as soon as possible before it's too late. And starting this weekend, simply has to start finishing ahead of the 99.
He does indeed, and that's easier said than done in 2025. I've got to say, Jose Antonio Rueda has been in mighty form, and this lap is going to emphasise that. He's going to move up the order into the top 3. Yes, he does. Goes into the top 2, P2, and is the second rider into the 1:55. So still about a second away from the lap record. So no need to stress about that in FP1, but definitely come qualifying, we can expect to see the lap record challenged. We should have clear running all the way through this one this weekend. A little bit of rain in the area, but if you well, I'm checking my weather forecast. There's nothing here until Monday. There is potentially some in the mountains tonight, but the track itself we should be in perfect condition right the way from now until Sunday, which at least gives one constant to work with all the way through the weekend. Jose Antonio Rueda is on another lap here. This will be his final flying lap. We've only got 30 seconds of the session remaining, but this will be looking to consolidate that P2 as he works his way up through turns 7 and 8. The S is down towards turn 9, the first of 2 dead stop hairpins. Eddie O'Shea's right in the way there, so that'll be getting looked at if Jose Antonio Rueda feels like he was put at a bit of risk there down into turn 9. He gets through O'Shea in the end, so O'Shea's got someone to latch back onto, but his lap has already gone. And as we count down the clock, 3, 2, 1, and we have the checkered flag now. So these riders will be coming across the line and completing their first session of the weekend. We haven't had any misdemeanors besides the David Munoz excursion down in towards turn 1. So the Moto3 lads have all been pretty well behaved, I've got to say. Guido Pini has taken the flag. He's 7th at the moment and will not be any higher. Carpe and Buchanan 21st and 22nd respectively. As well, Moodley moving up ahead of Aditama. Off your timing swings up into 25th. But Rueda is on a fast lap. It doesn't look like it's going to move him up anywhere. There's that checkered flag I was talking about. Across the line comes Rueda. Does improve in time, so finds a little bit of time in that final sector. It stays in P2. Vaqueras is 4th. Almanza 5th. He's on a good lap, so a flurry of good laps incoming. Oh no! Just as we were saying, the Moto3 lads had been well behaved, and checking out at turn 10, Luca Lanetta. Well, that is unlucky right at the end of this session. But Luca Lanetta, good to see him on his feet because he had a big crash over in Misano on the Grand Prix Sunday as well. So Lanetta on his feet and probably just angry that he's dropped it on his final flying lap. Let's get the riders across the line then. So we see Vaqueras as he moves up into the top 3. Oh, he moves up into the top 2, so finds a load of time in that final sector to go ahead of Vaqueras, ahead of Rueda. Kelso 4th, Almanza across the line, he'll stay 5th. But they're all chasing Adrian Fernandez, who set that lap time really early on in this session. He's P1 at a 1:55.947. Very solid start from 31.
Yeah, top 3 split by less than half a tenth then. Kelso in a solid P4. Ogden there up in P6, and the lead Japanese rider Yamanaka in P8. That is good to see. Luca Lanetta not looking in any sort of discomfort to some degree. Let's have a look at what happened up at turn 10. Just going to get the aftermath there. I think, yeah, just saw the bike going away on its own. Hopefully that was just a low side and not a high side for Luca Lanetta, who, as you say, had a huge, monumental crash through Cavone at Misano. And want to shout out to David Almanza for doing very, very well to avoid any collision over at Misano, because that was a big off for Lanetta, and good to see him walking away from that one. And of course that one as well up at turn 10. But it's another Honda rider at the top of the timesheets. Adrian Fernandez, top job into the 5th part.
Indeed, 1.2 seconds off that lap record, but P1 already, so that's all make Leopard Racing very, very happy going into practice later on today. Vaqueras, as we said, 2nd, very strong right the way throughout that session now, I've got to say. Vaqueras starting his Japanese GP in good form.
Yeah, needed it, didn't he, after the disappointment of Misano. Needed to come into Japan and have a decent start to Friday, and obviously jumping ahead of Rueda on Friday morning doesn't mean too much, but it'll be a nice injection of confidence for the number 36. Top job done from the top 3, that includes Rueda, and yeah, it's looking like a evenly contested Moto3 field, as it normally is on a Friday morning, as we get set for practice a little bit later on.
Yeah, your top 3 covered by less than half a tenth of a second up at the top, so I'll tell you what, that ain't bad going straight in out the blocks on Friday morning. I laugh because Lewis Sotheby's just getting ready to jump in, and he's thrown his paperwork right across the commentary box desk, so unfortunate for Mr. Sotheby, who is joining El York. You might have noticed that we are without Neil Morrison this weekend, and we know Neil's listening, he's back home, and he'll be back with us in a couple of weeks' time. But El York becomes Neil Morrison later on, and he's actually staying put for Moto2 after this Moto3 session. But paperwork retrieved for Lewis now. We can crack on with the results. Adrian Fernandez 55.9. That's what happens when you get out the blocks pretty swiftly. Adrian Fernandez is leading the way. Outside the top 10, Valentin Peroni 11th, just ahead of Luca Lanetta, who only 4 late on. So very strong stuff indeed from Peroni to get solidly settled down right the way through. Marco Morelli coming back into P13 right at the end. As you can see, ending in the leaders is RB Aditama 26th on the leaderboard at the end of Moto3 FP1. But that's all for myself, Kiko Giles, Moto3. Moto2 up next in the company of Lewis Sotheby and Elliott York. Enjoy.
Good morning, everybody, from Motegi as we begin the sprint to the finish line in this 2025 MotoGP World Championship. Of course, this is the weekend where Marc Marquez could finally cross that winning line for the 7th time in MotoGP. History beckons. The comeback is loading, and on Sunday afternoon, shortly before 3 p.m, when the checkered flag comes out at the end of 24 MotoGP laps of Motegi, that comeback could be complete for Marc Marquez. He's on the brink of the World Championship. Jose Antonio Rueda doesn't appear to be too far behind him in Moto3. He could be crowned World Champion as early as next weekend if results go his way. But the Moto2 World Championship, that's going to go a lot deeper into the season. Could yet potentially still go all the way down to the finale in Valencia in mid-November. There's a Moto2 class that was conquered by Japanese hero Ayagura in 2024. He'll be out on